Good afternoon, Judge Mudau.
Good afternoon, Chief Justice.
How are you, sir?
It's a beautiful day. I trust you are well.
I am super well.
I'm pleased.
And just remind us, for how many years have you been on the bench now?
I've been on the bench for 29 years. I mean, inclusive of the time that I was a magistrate. But on the bench in the High Court for 5 years, 3 months.
Yes. And have you had occasion to act as DJP, and if so, for how long?
No, I have not had that opportunity.
And tell us now in your own words, as briefly as you can, how you acquired your leadership and managerial skills that you hope to inject into the leadership of the judiciary in Limpopo, should you be appointed to deputize for the JP?
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the question. Chief Justice, Commissioners, I have had a distinguished career since I joined the fraternity. Very early on, when I was appointed a magistrate in Toyando, there were complimentary remarks by the then Judge President of the Venda High Court Division and other judges. This I refer to in my CV in relation to how I performed my duties. Subsequent to that, I was appointed a senior magistrate in Johannesburg. A year later, that was in 1997, I was then control senior magistrate for the criminal section, which I headed about in total 47 other magistrates, including 5 senior magistrates. It is for the whole of Johannesburg. That prepared me well because the section on its own, given the number of magistrates, if you think about it, beats any other magistrate court in the land. Now, if you look at the number of judicial officers for Limpopo, I had 4 times the number of judicial officers that I had to control. In that position, I helped the chief magistrate to run the court. This was the special grade chief magistrate, and I was involved in the day-to-day running and the management of the court. The job entailed was supervisory in nature and coordinating the functions of the various branch court with the main office. I had the responsibility of issuing rosters, monthly rosters for the various magistrates who had to perform duties in the main court as well as the various branch courts in Greater Johannesburg. I was in that position for 8 years. Subsequent to that, I was appointed a regional court magistrate, which position I sat for 10 years, and the managerial responsibility continued in that I was a coordinator, regional court coordinator. If I was to go back a bit to my introductory remarks, as a senior magistrate, as I said, I had to write reports, I had to coordinate what happens in reviews, appeals, between matters finalized in the district court and those that are headed for the High Court. So it was indeed a managerial position.
What contribution do you hope to make, or do you see yourself making, to reinforce or to enhance the leadership of the province? It's a fairly new division. What areas have you picked up that could benefit from your skills, from your experience, from your knowledge, to support the judge president?
I had
Yeah, just as briefly as you can.
Thank you. I had an opportunity to spend the entire term last year in Limpopo at the invitation of the judge president with the support of my own judge president, of course, with the blessing of the Minister of Justice. So that gave me exposure, a great deal in the workings of the Limpopo High Court and its local division. I managed to see some gaps that I think I can, if I was to succeed in this role, add value in terms of its management. The biggest challenge that they have, other than infrastructure, is that there's a huge backlog, in particular of criminal cases. And more so in Tohando, I'm sure you must have had this ad nauseum over a period of time, that there were instances, there have been instances where cases are not finalized. The biggest challenge, obviously, is that they don't have enough courts. They only have three. You've got three judges who sit there daily, who must do everything that has to be done in that local division. What I picked up is that the allocation, or rather the role playing, as it were, when one has regard to the transfer of matters from the lower courts to the high court, as intended for summary trials in terms of section 751C, is done a bit poorly, in that all matters invariably are given only 5 days. I checked the roster and I realized that it's almost well nigh impossible to go through a matter, rather a trial, for instance, that involves capital offenses such as murder, rape, you name it, and you've got about 31 charges and you've got numerous witnesses. And you know, for instance, I asked for those the rosters. They were sent to me. I was able to analyze. I picked that up as a matter that I thought one can add value. My suggestion would be to come up with a first appearance court to ensure that when a matter is postponed for trial, all the parties are ready for trial. My suggestion in support in this regard would be that when matters are referred to the High Court for summary trials, it should be for a specific date. If I succeed in this position, obviously, I would suggest to the JP that I sit in that court, given my experience over a long period of time, so that when I say the matter is set for trial ready, it is indeed trial ready, in that all the parties would be ready. That is the biggest downfall in my view. Secondly, Chief Justice, Limpopo High Court, and it requires judicization, case lines. I am in a province where I hardly ever see my colleagues, but yet you will sit in motion proceedings, in appeal proceedings, you name it all, where cases are, running. And thanks to my judge present, who's here, who introduced this, it's working. So I will be able to introduce it with speed and promote it with the JP and the rest of the colleagues, because that is where the challenge is. In other words, in as much as we may have only 3 judges, but I don't have to sit in Tohando in order to run the trial. For instance, this week, I was able to sit at 8 o'clock in the morning, at 8 o'clock at night, whereas, and in fact, I'm in a criminal trial role to deal with applications for leave to appeal. So it is doable. That way you'll be saving expenses, not only for the litigants, but also, it's more convenient because files are not lost, they are online. So that is one innovation that I'll be willing to bring aboard. Another factor that I think I can play a role on, I've experienced situations where, in particular in criminal matters, where when applications to appeal further has been entertained and someone who has been convicted now has been given leave to approach the next court. There are gaps in the system, in that you'll find that if the appeal is lost, I've experienced personally where a person eventually died without having served his term, whereas, and in fact, the appeal has been lost. I will be suggesting that there has to be a task team that involves the relevant role players, you name it, correctional services, NPA, a member, myself or someone from the judiciary, to ensure that if you are given an opportunity to prosecute an appeal, you don't do that. We must interrogate what is happening so that eventually, if there's no more interest to appeal the matter, then the person must serve. More often than not, you find that records from the lower courts are incomplete for purpose of appeal when they come to the High Court. Why? Because the data would have been lost. But if you have such a structure in place, the system cannot be abused as it is currently abused. So those are some of the initiatives. The list is not exhaustive, Chief Justice. If time permitting, I can add more if you permit me.
Felix, let me just have your name so that, and then there is none. Very well. JP, again, I apologize to you for saying you are Lokhodi, man. I really apologize, my brother. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Judge Mudau.
Good afternoon, JP.
Judge Mudau, last year, 2020, you had an opportunity of coming to Limpopo to sit as a judge there with the blessing of your Judge President, Justice JP Mlambo. And most of the time you spend the time at the main court, the main division in Polokwane. What were your observations there in respect of the running of the matter, in particular, even civil matters, or even all the matters for that matter? And your observation and what innovations would you bring forth were you to be part and parcel of that division?
Thank you, JP. When I was in Polokwane with you, I said in appeals, I dealt with mental health matters, rentals. You allocated to me, JP, you recall, very lengthy, outstanding criminal court matters. As I indicated in my introduction, I thought the one matter, for instance, that I dealt with last, which captured media attention, was meant only for a week. As it turned out, it was more. I had to come back to my own JP to ask for more time. I came back during the recess period to continue with the matter. However, the prosecutor was also involved before another colleague in a matter that has been running for the last 5 years, as you may recall. I had no option but to request my JP to release me for an additional 10 days after consulting with the parties. Bar one day when the building was closed down because of COVID challenges, I managed to finalize that matter in 8 days. Now, you asked me, what were the challenges? I realized, for instance, that people are a bit like a rascal. So in my court, I made it clear to the legal representatives, to the orderlies, to everyone involved in my court, that I would not allow that. If I say I adjourn the matter at 9 o'clock, for 9 o'clock rather, or 9:30 a.m., that would be the time. So I think the word, my presence and the word quickly spread around that in that court, this firmness. I was fair, I was firm. So that is the one area that I noticed. As for appeal matters, JP, my one regret I noticed is that when I took over some of the appeal matters, there were no heads. And I thought, that is a bit unfortunate, because you might end up with a huge appeal matter, but you don't know what is the appeal all about. Is it, if it's civil matter, is it quantum? What is this? You have to read the whole record. So that is the one issue that I thought needs to be looked at, which can be easily be resolved by, an appropriate amendment to directives in relation to when heads must be filed. I thought to wait, unfortunately, for a busy division such as yours, would delay the hearing of the appeals. Thank you.
Further question, Judge Mudau. You are in Gauteng. Gauteng courts are modernized or digitized in respect of motion and as long as trial matters. As you are aware, in Limpopo, we're not yet connected. There's no connectivity. We've not yet gone on digital or on case line. Now, with your experience from Gauteng, if you were to come to Limpopo, how would you go about orientating your fellow judges to get into this new modern technology in respect of a hearing of the matters?
JP, in that respect, I will hit the ground running. In as much as when the program was introduced about 2 years ago, thereabout, one had questions with regard to, will this work? Will this not work? We have seen the benefits. The benefits are that you don't have to wait for a file. The benefits are that everything is on case line. The benefits are that you can receive heads of argument autonomously. The benefits are that you can communicate with the parties even in the middle of the night if there are certain concerns that you've got. The benefit are that there are no undue delays. So I'll definitely be promoting this with I can't wait. This is the way to go, more so because the division, particularly Toyando, has got no infrastructure. So in the event, for instance, you were to invite some acting judges, they don't have to go and sit in Toyando. They can sit in the benefit of their libraries wherever they are to connect in, because in as much as the building itself has got Wi-Fi connectivity problems, my chamber, if I recall, was next to yours. I had no problem with connectivity, meaning that it's certain floors, certain offices, basically, where there are problems, but one can rearrange that and identify spots in the building where you can run a civil trial, motion court proceedings, appeal proceedings successfully. So a connectivity problem, I think, should be a small errand to sort out.
I thank you, and thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you very much, Judge President. Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Justice Mudau.
Good afternoon, Mr. Singh.
You would have heard the adage that justice delayed is justice denied. I see on your application that you have 3 reserved judgments. Tell us as to the status of those judgments as of today, and if they're still not completed, why is it so?
You can be rest assured that it was only because I had not yet delivered the judgments, and even then they were not delayed judgments, I must point out. They were not. Those judgments, you'll find them on SAFI. So they have been delivered. I owe no judgment as we speak, not a single one.
No, thank you for that, Chief Justice. That is all.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Your excuse, Judge Mudau.
No, Chief Justice.
I called for names. I didn't
No,
listen.
you didn't. No, you didn't.
No, I think, Honorable Malema, it is well. Give me your name. I said before I call Judge President Makoba and Mr. Singh, may I have colleagues' names? And nobody said anything. I said, oh, so there is no name. I'll write you down, Honorable Malema. And Honorable Minister, I heard your voice as well.
And
Who else?
Dodovu.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm confirming that you did call, but there was a technical problem. That's why I could not hear you clearly.
Okay, there must have been. There
Yeah.
must have been. After Honorable Nyambi, who is next?
Honorable Cyril.
Honorable Trava. Yes. All right.
CJ.
Yes.
Bernard.
Thank you. Okay, Bernard.
Lucas.
Thank you. Any other? Thank you.
JP Mlambo.
Okay, GP. Honorable Malema.
CJ.
Honorable Malema, over to you, sir.
Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Judge Mudau. Have you ever been to Toyando since you're acting in Limpopo?
Yes, I was there.
You did court in Toyando.
Not only that, I was there a few weeks ago. I told the High Court. I had an appointment with the current.
Judge, I think speak into the mic or position it in such a way that it will capture
Thank
your
you.
voice, because the likes of President Maya won't hear you.
Thank you, CJ. I was giving an assurance to Mr. Malema that indeed I've been to Toyando. I go there often because that's my home province one. So I went to Toyando High Court. I had an appointment there with the current acting Deputy Judge President Homo. It was over a weekend. It was on a Saturday in particular. He took me through the entire building. I made observations of my own. I knew the building before, but I had not been there for some time. I hope that answers your question, sir.
No, I'm asking, have you done court in Toyando? That's what I'm asking.
Fair enough. I haven't done court in Toyando.
Do you have a problem doing court in Toyando? Because I heard you giving example that this digital courts will help because Toyando, there is a problem of building. You can do Toyando being in Polokwane.
I have no problem in sitting in Toyando. I started working in Toyando, so I have no issue whatsoever in sitting, in constituting a court at the Toyando High Court.
So, Judge, why when you were asked about your years on the bench, you said 29 years and then self-corrected and said 5 years? Is there a difference?
I had to clarify that. It's a magistrate court bench and a high court bench. When I said 29 years, that was inclusive of the time that I spent in the lower courts.
Did you do civil case when you were acting in Polokwane?
Yes, I did. Some of them are on Safely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mali.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable CJ and Mudau. Maybe to take it from where Honorable Malema ended.
Yes.
On the 29 years and that confusion. Do you consider magistrates as being part of the judiciary?
They are indeed.
So maybe that is what they caused that, where you are not sure whether it's 29 or 5 years.
I am very sure. So that is why I mentioned 29 years. I was just doing it for the benefit of those who need clarity.
Oh, okay. The issue of rationalization of our courts from time to time become a very difficult issue for us with the leadership of the judiciary, particularly on the acting appointments in the various divisions across the country, because it has become clear that Limpopo and Mpumalanga, they've got serious difficulties in terms of the size of the courts, unlike the other ones. What has been your experience since you have been to Limpopo with regards to the work backlog?
The work backlog, Honorable Minister, is huge. I spoke to the current Director of Public Prosecutions to have a sense, because I had to promote some of my ideas. For instance, the first appearance court or the certification court, I had to hear her views in that regard. She told me that when she started there, she only had 23 cases, but the rolls have ballooned, as it were. So there's a lot of work. I have spoken to the current regional court president, spoke to the chief magistrate. This flows obviously from the concerns that the chief justice had in my last interview. So this time around, I had to do that. And each single one of them complained that unfortunately the work has ballooned. You will be shocked, by the way, Minister, by gender-based related violence cases. They are some of the worst that I've ever seen. Now, if those cases are not pushed and resources are not committed, unfortunately, it has got serious implication for the rule of law and also for people losing confidence in the way we do things. So to give you an example, I spoke to a regional magistrate who sits in Guyana. He must sit 2 weeks in Guyana and another 2 weeks in Sukhumekar. The distance is about 150 kilometers odd, he told me. So imagine when he's in Sukumakar, the work in Guyana is falling behind, as it were. So that is some of the problem. Limpopo is a huge province, and the infrastructure has not been extended. You look at the Tondo High Court; it was built for the then times. Nothing is moved. The High Court itself has got the DP staff, the master staff, the state attorneys in one tiny little building.
Yeah, maybe CJ, with your indulgence, last follow-up.
Yes, Honorable Minister, please proceed.
So how will your appointment help with that difficulty that the division is having in terms of this lack of the judicial post that meets the backlog?
Minister, I am aware that the resources, there's a lot of competition in relation to state resources. My approach, as I was at pains to indicate, is that with case lines functional, if you remove, for instance, your appeals from Thando or any other person, your motion court proceedings, and you're doing them online because you can do those. You don't need a physical court to do them. Anyone can sit wherever they are. You constitute a court. Obviously, this will also entail, Minister, that we have to identify very, very old cases, because I know you are amenable to appointing, if properly motivated, an acting judge to sit over those very old cases, as you have done over the last few years, period of time that I've picked up. So one will have to identify very, very old cases so that we find acting judges to come in and help, and that way deal with the situation as best as we can.
Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Dodovu.
Thank you, CJ. Good afternoon, Justice.
Good afternoon.
You have applied for a management position, and my question will test your capacity in terms of management.
By all means.
I visited the Polokwane High Court 2 years ago. But what I picked up is shocking. It was built in 2010, but there are serious problems in terms of the infrastructure of Polokwane. For example, the budget was 133 to construct it. It ballooned to 1.1 billion. Still, maintenance of issues like geysers, like water, like lifts at that time were not working. If you are to be afforded the opportunity to fix that or linked to that, the department was informing us that there is an investigation, the SIU investigation taking place to investigate what happened. I don't want to take you to the history of that. The information is available. But if you were to be given the responsibility to resolve the problem, how would you go about doing that?
Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Commissioner. You would have heard from previous interviews, I remember Mr. Meller complaining that another big problem with Polokwane is water provision. I inquired, I was told that it has to deal, they've got tanks on top of the building. However, there's a problem with the pump. I would imagine that to fix a pump certainly should cost a little bit less than, to deal with the entire building. Because if there's no water provisioning, you are talking about human rights. After 2 days, a day, you can't be using a building because you can't use a bathroom, for instance. It becomes a problem. I've experienced that personally when there'll be no water, but it's a different situation when you've got access to your own private bathroom. But for more than 48 hours, it becomes untenable. So as you said, there's investigations going on. That is obviously beyond us. But to fix a tap, or rather to fix a pump, to fix that, my responsibility to knock at the responsible doors that please attend to the pumps.
Lastly, to CJ, one of the biggest problems there is communication. As you know, Limpopo is a poor province. People travel long distances from Sekhukhune and elsewhere. how would you improve communication between the court and the communities in its area of jurisdiction? Communication.
The courts communicate through judgments that we deliver, that are, that we preside over. In instances where there are community activities rather, where it is appropriate for a judge to attend, I will have no issue in attending those, to address whatever platforms I can in order to alleviate challenges for people to be able to understand how things run in our division.
Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Honorable Dodovo. Honorable Nyambi.
Thank you, CJ. Afternoon, Judge Mudau.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
I'm taking it from where Honorable Dodovo left it. The issue of the position you've applied for is a leadership position.
Yes.
So if you can share with us the current immediate challenges facing judiciary in the country, given your 5 or 29 years experience.
I need clarity. Do you mean facing the judiciary countrywide?
Yes, I'm talking about the country.
Thank you, Commissioner. The current challenge from where I sit as I look at things is that the judiciary is under attack, immense attack. When one looks at social media, recently, I must add, it is a very important arm of government. If it's broken and we allow it to break, that would be a huge threat to our democracy. That to me is a challenge. So I think it behoves all of us so that we do our bit to ensure that we do not attack it unduly. I'm not suggesting for a moment that judges are beyond criticism. I'm suggesting now, as I hereby do, that when they are, criticized, it must be informed criticism. So that to me is the biggest challenge. I hope I answered you.
Let's take it further and you explain a classical case where you'll be saying the attack, it's fine, because you have tried to explain that, but you never use an example so that you can be on the same page. I don't want to assume we're understanding each other.
Recently, there has been in public platform and in social media suggestions, for instance, that the judiciary is captured and words to that effect. And that, to me, obviously, if there are such suggestions and they are not investigated thoroughly, it leaves a wrong impression. People will start doubting whether the judiciary indeed is independent. That is the one example I can think of.
I am seriously mindful of time. Thank you, Judge. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Honorable Nyandi. Honorable Baba.
Thank you very much, CJ. Good afternoon, Judge.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Thanks. Notwithstanding your senior positions at magistracy, you have not acted at senior level at High Court. And you also have not been invited to act at SCA. In your view or opinion, does this count against you being given a senior position at like the one you have applied for? Thank you so much.
Not at all, Commissioner, because I have had a lifelong experience of leadership. So that experience is not lost. For instance, in JSC, I served in provincial committees, I served in national committees. I serve in committees in my own division. If I were to take it a step further, respect is earned. I have earned my stripes in terms of respect from where I come from. If I was to give an example, for instance, I am often invited to give talks, to give lectures in relation to aspirant judges. That alone is a recognition. Now, if you look at my positioning in the division, I am at 47 when one has regard to the as at the beginning of the term. But there are a number of judges who have since left, given that they were here, and meaning that that number, that seniority has been reduced. Locally, where I sit in Johannesburg, I am at number 22. So if you remove a number of those, meaning that I'm in the top 20 of the judges that are in Johannesburg, can I take it a step further? I am often allocated work to sit and preside over full court matters, which involves judging the work of another judge. In other words, presiding over a matter that involves 3 other judges, and I'm presiding. I mean, a few such matters this time. I've done it often. So that is not a small role. And that certainly would not take away anything. I mean, either you have it or you don't, and I do.
Ngiyabonga, SJ. Ngiyabonga, Judge.
A small
Thank you, sir.
follow-up, CJ, just a very small follow-up, if you don't mind.
Okay, JP. Yes, go ahead.
Judge Mudau, you say in Johannesburg you're number 22. If
Yes.
we were to slot you as one of the judges in Limpopo, what number would you be?
Currently in Limpopo, there are only 3 judges who are my seniors. 2 of them are retiring next year. Other than the JP, I beg your pardon. Other than the JP, it's Justice Homu, Justice Patudi, it's just Makafula.
Thank you. Sir.
Thank you, JP. Commissioner Tsepe.
Sorry, CJ. Just a quick follow-up.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Which Judge Patudi is your senior?
The one who's not here. The one who was here in 2019.
The one in
Yeah,
Toyando?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So the one who's here today is my junior.
Thanks.
Commissioner Tsepe.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Judge.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Judge, I know you haven't acted as a DJP in Limpopo, but I just wanted to find out from you while you were there, if in your view you came across any challenges in the division relating to allocation of work, and if so, do you think you could propose any system to deal with allocation of work to judges for their optimum exposure?
Let me preface this by the following. In my previous position as a magistrate, I allocated work to 42 magistrates in Johannesburg. So that comes, and I spent 8 years in that position. I would allocate a court and work and identify strengths and weaknesses of each individual judicial officer to say you're strong in drugs, you're strong in this one, and so forth and so on. So that certainly won't be a problem. By the way, if I'm a senior judge in an opposed motion court role, which often happens, where I come from in Gauteng, often we're 4 judges to do in a week opposed motion role, and it has happened often where I'm a senior judge, and I'll allocate work as I've often done to junior judges. I sit often as a senior judge in urgent court matters. I did that the last term, towards the last term, and I'll allocate work to a junior judge. So it is part of how things happen in a busy division such as mine.
Thank you, Judge. Just the last one relates to, I heard you talk about how timelessly you deliver your judgments. Do you think there may be challenges in Limpopo regarding timeless delivery of judgments, and how would you, if there are, how would you propose to capacitate judges and introduce interventions to enable them to meet this, if those problems exist?
It is a fair question. When I was in Limpopo, I led by example. When I left there, all my matters were finalized. The very last day of the end of term, I sat with the judge present in a full court and in a full bench court with the judge present. He didn't have to ask me for a judgment. Those judgments were delivered within days. In other words, I have been exemplary, and and I'm sure. And by the way, my colleagues were pleasantly surprised at the speed at which I finalized cases. So that alone, it's a gospel on its own, because there's work, but the work needs to be done. There's work, the work needs to be done. Going forward, obviously, this would entail engaging them, having meetings, and coming up with strategies as to how best to distribute the work. The issue I gave as an example, the back roll, rather, the huge court roll in Tondo, I'm willing to go and deal with some of the cases. I've got no fear of that. And I would want to see those cases finalized if I have to sit in those courts.
Judge, thank you, CJ.
CJ, President.
CJ is here, Commissioner Tsepe.
Are you done, Commissioner Tsepe?
CJ, many times I kept on saying, thank you, CJ. I was going.
Yeah, no, there was a little glitch. Commissioner Barnard.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Judge, I just want to clarify, is there one SPAR group versus Nedbank, or two matters with that name?
I could not hear the question accurately.
Sorry, I just wanted to check, is there two matters with SPAR group versus Nedbank, or is it the same matter that was reserved and part heard?
There's only one matter, and I can give you an assurance that that judgment has since been delivered. It's 26 pages long, typed. You'll find it on Safli.
Because you indicate on page 31 of your, no, what is that page of the bundle, page 31 of the bundle, you indicate that on 28 September you reserved judgment, which obviously since has been granted. But then remember, you filled out this form in November, and in November you then said the SPAR Group versus Limited and others waits allocation for argument on merits and availability of counsel. So I just wasn't sure if that was maybe something in addition to the previous. Sometimes these matters have various angles.
No, I only had one commercial matter between the SPAR Group of companies and Nedbank, and that matter, I repeat, has been handed down. I owe no judgment.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnard. Honorable Lucas.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Justice Mudau.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
I don't know how to preface my question because it's two prefaces, but you have indicated that you've got a very high number of gender-based violence cases within the Limpopo division. That is what you have said. My observation is that Limpopo have been, I think in 2019 we've been here, but we were here, and there was a challenge with regards to the allocation of judicial officers to Limpopo, which it seems as if they've got a very small allocation of judicial officers. In that context, if you successfully are appointed into the leadership position that you are applying for, how are you envisaging to, with the existing challenges, to address the specific areas, particularly the one that you have highlighted, because it is of interest to myself? Thank you.
My immediate program of action would be to list them in order of age. In other words, since when were they reported? Because you don't want a situation where a victim of gender-based violence cannot be traced anymore, because then the case is over and you'll have someone, free, going through the communities, repeating the, the crimes that they allegedly committed. So it will be to identify those, list them in order of age, and approach for a slot if we can properly motivate for acting appointment. There are many competent magistrates and practitioners, by the way, who can sit for short durations of time to accommodate those. In Pulukani, we still have some office space and courts that can sit. In my discussions with the DPP, she said to me it would not be a problem to transfer those cases, rather to transport witnesses and accused to Pulukwane if those matters, some of them are short, for us to accommodate those trials in Pulukwane because of the infrastructure challenges in Toyando. So that will be my mission.
Just the second question that I want to ask, I hear what you say. I would have also recommended that you possibly work with all stakeholders.
I beg your pardon?
You possibly work with all stakeholders in addressing the specific issues, because when we had our consultation with Limpopo, the Commission of Gender Equality and the Premier's Office and others, we actually urge them to form a kind of a committee that will be able to deal with these issues, and it can assist very well if, as you judiciary, you can be part of that body. But I think, let me not elaborate on that specific issue. Just lastly, if you go there, you have not been a permanent fixture of that specific division or jurisdiction. And now what do you actually, if you get appointed, how are you going to approach the issue of being accepted, or the kind of cooperation or lack of cooperation that can possibly be there? I mean, any person that are coming from somewhere will be seen as an outsider. But how do you envisage to approach that kind of challenge?
Commissioner, let me give you an assurance that even the first time around when I presented myself, I had majority support of sitting judges in that division. Even when I'm here, I give you that assurance. It's a very small world. We know each other. I've worked with the two candidates that are going to be interviewed after me. We are friends. We are colleagues. I have interpersonal skills. I relate well with most people. To me, it's about the job that needs to be done. Even if we disagree, can we please disagree with respect? You don't have to agree with me in every decision that I make. You may disagree, but let's do so civilly and let the work be done. Anything else is a distraction. We don't need it.
Chief Justice, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Justice Mudau. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lucas. And Honorable JP Mlambo.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice. Two questions, Judge Mudau. One, I want your views about this statement that as a leader in the judiciary, you don't only have to be a leader in management and administration, but also as a jurist. What's your response to that statement?
Thank you, JP. Obviously, we all bring different traits to the work we do. Some are strong in other areas, some are, weak in other areas. But given this position, obviously, one has to be a leader, I think, and try in all fronts to make this exercise work, because you've got a huge responsibility. You'll be supporting the judge president as the head of that division. So there are areas of interest where you have to show your leadership skills for this for the work of the judiciary, to be a success.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up, it's not my second question, it's follow-up. Have you written any judgments that have gone to the SCA and been upheld and maybe gone to the Constitutional Court and be upheld?
As a matter of fact, I have. I was, the last time when I was here, there was a matter of Magnet's trust judgment involving trustees. A full court, in other words, 3 judges in my division shot me down. And recently, on the 23rd of October 2020, the SCA redeemed me. So in other words, my original order stood, and I was pleased because the order that upset my judgment, the bench rather, 2 of them were my senior colleagues, and only 1 of them was my junior. So imagine if you are, how edifying it is to know that you can stand your ground and that you're wrong, not wrong on the lowest way. That is the one part. I've been taken to the CC, where I declared a mistrial and ordered a retrial in the Constitutional Court. So yes, I've been tested. I only have 1 single judgment as I sit here in front of you, JP. You should be proud, in which I was not, wherein I was upset. Otherwise, as I sit, I don't have any other judgment where I was upset.
Thank you. My last question. With your regional court experience and as an aspirant leader in the Limpopo division, one of the responsibilities of a judiciary leader like JP and DJP in the JP's absence is to chair the PEEC. The perennial problem in South Africa are the awaiting trial detainee cases in the regional court that are not finished. Some go up to 8 years being parted and not finalized. What do you think you could do to address that problem in Limpopo if you are appointed as DJP?
JP, I'm pleased you are asking this question. It is the answer I give you. It's linked to the original introductory remarks that I made. I think not enough focus is given to the way that the work is allocated. I started a trial this week. There are 38 counts involving gender-based violence, rape, numerous rapes, by the way, by an alleged serial rapist. The days allocated for that trial, it's 20 days. I said to you when I started to introduce the topic that in Limpopo, particularly in Toyando, each matter, irrespective of the size of the matter, the number of complainants, capital crimes being involved, rape, you name it, robbery, aggravated, you name it, they give it a week. So my approach would be, JP, to come up with a certification court to be involved in the role planning. In other words, do your transfer for a summary trial in the High Court, but the moment it lands there, I'm going to ask the JP, can I sit so that when the role is planned, I have a firm and an active hand as to how can these matters be dealt with in an expeditious fashion. I was deeply concerned when the DPP gave me examples that there are instances where one case was postponed 180 times, in another instance 160 times. So there's something seriously wrong. Something needs to be done. And I'm sure I can add value in that regard.
Thank you, Judge Mudau. Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Judge President. Commissioner Sigogo.
Thank you, JP. Thank you, CJ. Sorry for that, CJ.
Don't worry, I was a JP before.
Thank you. Judge Mudau, how are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Sigogo. Commissioner Sigogo.
Thank you. You are contesting for the position of DJP being 3, 2 males and 1 female. Limpopo division of the High Court has 1 female judge.
That's a fact.
And Limpopo's JP is a male.
That's a fact.
So I'll want you to assure this commission that an appointment of a male candidate to that position where we have only one female judge with a male JP will augur well to the transformatory agenda of the judiciary.
Thank you, Commissioner Sigogo.
Maybe let me complicate it further, Judge Mudau, and say the vacancy was created by the appointment to the SCA of a woman who used to be deputy.
That's correct. I'm aware of that. And I can't forget the question that was asked by Commissioner Malima 2 years ago. Kept me busy there on that aspect. Let me start by the following, and please bear me out. When I arrived in Johannesburg in 1997, this was 3 years after 1994. I arrived in an office which was predominantly white and Afrikaner. I took up a position and replaced a male Afrikaner who was 55 years of age. He was boarded because he went mental by my arrival. I was young and he could not take it. I embarked on a process to transform that office. I am pleased to tell you, because I spoke to Justice Karase, whom I had identified and invited her to come and serve. She was a prosecutor, but I played a leading role in identifying her and many other women who are now serving in the judiciary. Not only women, behind me in the course of the next few days, you'll be interviewing people that I had identified in transforming the office. A number of them, I don't have to mention names. There are at least 3. So to come back to the issue that you asked me, if I was to be appointed, that's not an end in itself. None of us are here to live forever. Next year, 2 judges are retiring. I'll make it my mission. In fact, I gathered already that the JP sent for training in March 2 aspirant judges whom I was told in confidence that they are ready to be appointed, 2 women. And you can be rest assured, I'll be taking it up if I go to Limpopo, I'll be taking it up with him that no, we can't sit only as males. So it's not an end in itself. In fact, if you look at 1741B, which is the subject matter of your question, as enshrined in the Constitution, it is not phrased in peremptory terms. It says consider. So in other words, you've got a female candidate waiting to be interviewed. By all means, if you find a fit, I can't be in the way. I'm just going there to do what I've been doing for all these years. To me, it's service. I enjoy the Gauteng division of the High Court. I've made friends. I've made it my home. I'm highly respected. I'm highly appreciated by my colleagues. To me, I'm just going back to another province to do the best I possibly can, given the whatever number of years that God would grant me. So that you can be rest assured would not be an issue. If I sit in that position, remind me in 2 years' time, what have you done? What is this? What is that? I've already told you 2 candidates, women, are in the wings.
Thank you for your answer. And I should assure you, I know where you stand in transformation. So that's why I wanted you to clarify that to the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skok.
Thank you, CJ.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Judge Mudau. You're excused.
Sorry, CJ, may I just ask a following up question? Sorry,
Sure.
it wasn't on the list.
Sure.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
I would just like to know from you, you said quite with conviction that the SPA matter that you initially indicated on your questionnaire was handed down and can be found on SAFLI.
Yes.
It's not there.
Is it not there?
No, it's not there. And my question is, to what extent can you rely on SAFLI to publish your judgment so that you can say this with conviction?
If it's not there, I apologize. I directed the librarian to put it on SAFLI, and I'll tell you why. Initially, and by the way, this was a highly contested commercial matter. the parties had, against whom I found, had indicated that they were going to appeal. Guess what? They have abandoned that. So the appeal, the judgment stands. I can assure you, I've got my computer with me. I can forward it to you now. The judgment is out there. It's not on Safely. I'm going to make a follow-up with the librarian. What's happened? It's not every day that we check, but I had directed that, please, that judgment should be at least be on Safely. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to mislead.
No, I didn't think you misled. I
No.
was just not sure how things ended up on Safely, because sometimes we don't find cases that are handed down on Safely. And that's why I checked.
The practice with us is that once, in my division, once a judgment is handed down, it's a public document, you send it to the library, whether it goes on to Safely or not. There are many, many judgments, I'm sure the JP will bear me out, which we hand down, but which form the database of the division. There are many, many judgments. So that one, I made an assumption because I had in fact directed that it must be by way of email. So I made that assumption, and I thought that's where you'll find it. But you know, I'll make a follow-up on that.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof. You're excused, Judge Mudau.
Thank you for having me.